Okay, we're gonna have a video today on some gun laws that I think will always exist. Doesn't mean you have to agree with me, I just think they're always going to exist. You know me, I really don't believe in a lot of gun control, but these laws are laws that are here to stay, period, and we really can't do anything about it. Okay? Before we get started, I'm going to talk about a case. I'm going to do a little update for you. The Emperor is being sued for the drink ban by the soda companies. I'll explain why. You know how firearm manufacturers have to make standard capacity magazines for 40 plus states, and the less than 10 states that have restrictions, they have to make a compliant magazine, and the standard magazines have to say law enforcement only. That requires extra work, extra assembly lines, extra machinery, blah blah blah, and it costs them money. And I guarantee the state isn't helping them pay for that money, make up that money. Well, soda manufacturers have to have special special assembly lines, special bottles, so that they can sell compliant soda in New York City. Soda in bottles less than 16 ounces. And they're tired of that, and they're suing the Emperor. Let's see how that works out. Now, I get a lot of questions about this law. The Hughes Amendment. The Hughes Amendment means that any machine gun manufactured after May 19th, 1986 is ineligible for commercial sale. Allow me to explain. Machine gun, and I know about submachine gun, squad machine gun, assault rifle, heavy machine gun, light machine gun. I'm just going to say machine gun to simplify it. A machine gun means any gun of any caliber, any style, anything. If I pull the trigger one time and one bullet comes out, not machine gun. If I pull the trigger one time and more than one bullet comes out, machine gun. That's how the government defines it. Now, you could have had a machine gun that was made before May 19th, 1986, and you probably paid very cheap money for it. And now it's astronomically high. Because you have to, in order for you to buy a machine gun, you have to live in a state that allows the machine gun. Then you have to go back and find the machine gun made before the ban. This means machine guns are astronomical. I made a video about this. I'll put that video below. Make a note for myself. Yeah, just put a little star next to it. Anyway. Barry and Eric from Iraq Veteran 8888 were discussing this, and they have a theory. And their theory is very valid. And my theory too. This is their theory. The rich are keeping it around. Example. Machine pistols, Mac 10, Mac 11, Uzi. They cost about $4,000. Assault rifles, M16, full auto AK, FNFAL, God knows what else. They cost about $10,000. Machine guns that have not been produced in 50 years cost about $50,000. The Tommy gun, for example. The heavy belt feds could be 10, 20, 50, 100 or more $1,000. So now Barry's about 57, 58-ish at the time I'm making this video. Barry, many years ago, when he was younger than me, used to work at a factory that made Mac 11 machine pistols. And he had a side business where you would buy an AR-15, which cost about $500, bring it to him. He had the paperwork for you. He did your tax stamp. 4 months later, when the tax stamp came back with an approval, he would convert your AR-15 to a full automatic M16, which requires gunsmithing knowledge, which he has, and extra parts. And you could have, for under $1,000, a full-fledged M16. Nowadays, the M16 is about $10,000. Now, If you have a machine gun that was manufactured, taken right off the assembly line, put in a box, and never opened, the price doubles. The machine pistols are now $8,000. The assault rifles are now $20,000. The belt feds and God knows what else, they could be close to $250,000. There was an episode of Tales of the Gun I saw recently on YouTube. Guns of World War II. They go back. They had a historian go to a factory and open up boxes. He opened up a box with a Browning automatic rifle. It was manufactured during World War II, put into a box, never opened. Maybe the war ended before it got overseas, but it was never opened. If the government wants to put that in the market, it's about $100,000. Brand new, mint condition, still in the box. Now, you have an M16. It's worth $10,000 and it's used. Hughes Amendment is repealed tomorrow. Someone in Georgia can go to Moss Pawn, buy an AR-15 from Barry. Let's assume he charges $1,000 for it. Is that saying? Then you ask Barry to do your tax stamp, give him some money for parts and labor. He turns it into an M16 for under $2,000. If I can get a brand new M16 for $2,000, why do I want to pay $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a used one? I don't. Tommy gun. They still make Tommy guns today with 16-inch barrels, semi-automatic only, compliant. Tommy gun, an automatic, full automatic Tommy gun is worth $50,000. If you can legally buy a brand new machine gun, Auto Ordnance, the company that makes these Tommy guns, can start manufacturing full autos again and charge $4,000, let's just say. Why would you want to pay $50,000 for a used Tommy gun when you could pay $4,000 for a new one? Here's my theory. The fear factor. The anti-gun lobby, the anti-gun this, the fear-mongering, the hate-mongering, the race-mongering, all the mongering. We had a congressman who was next door to me. One district over. Elliot Engel. Total loser. Tax cheat. Voted against Brian Terry. He walked out of the contempt hearing and didn't vote. He walked out of the contempt hearing to support Eric Holder. Absolute total loser. Total waste of life. Congressman Elliot Engel wrote a letter to the Supreme Court. He said verbally and in writing in 2008, 5 conservative justices of the Supreme Court said yes, a citizen in Washington, D.C. can buy a handgun and incorporate it into their home defense system. Does that sound bad to you? He wrote a letter scathing the Supreme Court about how the murder rate was going to rise and how victims and crime and all this other garbage. Keeping in mind Washington, D.C. was a murder capital, and keeping in mind home invaders in Washington, D.C. knew that if you had a gun, it was locked up at all times. Now, if you have politicians like Elliot Engel that blast the Supreme Court for allowing a citizen to own a handgun and incorporate it into their home defense system, can you imagine how nuts they'll get if you repeal the Hughes Amendment? You see the mass shootings, Aurora, Columbine, Tucson, all these other places. What's going to happen is they're going to say, because machine guns are legal, they'll be easier to get, and the next time there's a shooting spree, it'll be done with a machine gun. Is that true? Maybe, maybe not. Do they believe it? Yes. Perception is reality. They believe it's true, therefore it is true to them. So, Hughes Amendment is off the table. I know you're sad about it. I know a lot of you guys out there want to buy a full auto M16 for a little less money than $10,000, but it ain't going to happen. So, that's gone. Other Class 3 weapons. Silencers. Rifles with barrels shorter than 16 inches. Shotguns with barrels shorter than 18 inches. You know, if you buy these weapons, you can buy them brand new. There's no Hughes Amendment on them. But they have to be tax stamped by the ATF. And I did a whole video on this. It's part of the machine gun video, so I'll put it down in the link. Now, criminals don't want to go to prison for a long time, even though they don't. They try to do things to reduce the charges. Take burglary. Burglary means entering a premises where you do not belong with the intent of committing another crime therein. In my home state of New York, third-degree burglary means you broke into a non-residential place with the intent to commit a crime therein. Second-degree burglary means you broke into a home with the intent to commit a crime therein. First-degree burglary means you broke into either or with the weapon. Weapon could be knife, weapon could be gun, weapon could be anything. Now, if a burglar has the weapon, the charges are increased. That's why 90% of burglars don't carry weapons. Are there burglars that do? Of course, but not that many. Because when they're caught, they want to be able to plead down a little bit, tell the judge they're sorry, get a little bit of a lighter sentence. Now, some states, like my state, possession of an illegal firearm is 3.5 years in prison, mandatory minimum. All across the United States of America, possession of a Class 3 weapon without a tax stamp is 10 years in federal prison. State courts have 125 cases a day in criminal court, and they will take a plea deal over anything. In fact, 93% of people arrested take a plea deal. Another 6% go to like a bench trial where the judge tries you, and maybe 1 out of 100 people gets an actual jury trial. Now, federal court has maybe 2 or 3 cases a day. Less cases, more time to work on them, more strict laws, and there's no more parole in the federal system. So now when the federal judge sends you away for 10 years, you lose every minute of that. So, a criminal knows that if they're caught with a Class 3 weapon, they get 10 years in federal prison, mandatory. They'll go to the street and buy a junk gun for 10 bucks, junk revolver or some crap for 10 bucks. Now, there are police officers in major cities on the job 25 years that have testified before anti-gun committees saying, listen, I confiscated 10,000 firearms. 3 were machine guns. The gangbangers that were running around in LA in the 80s, they didn't have their Uzis and AKs tax stamped. So, the Class 3 system is a deterrent for criminals. I hate to say it, but it is, because criminals don't want to be caught with it. Now, if you abolish the Class 3 system, and if you say possession of any gun is 3 years in prison, a criminal would get a machine gun and face 3 years in state prison as opposed to 10 years in federal prison. So, and the anti-gun lobby will take the videos of the police officers testifying that 3 weapons out of 10,000 are machine guns, 2 weapons out of 6,000 are silencers. They will take that and they will use it against you. And they will say the Class 3 system works. Now, do I have a problem with the law-abiding citizen buying the tax stamp? No. I'm less afraid of a citizen with a machine gun than I am a criminal with a junk $5.22 handgun. That's it. I'm afraid of the criminal, not the citizen. You could argue that federal government cannot register guns because the government is afraid. Our founders based our country, God forbid a dictator takes over, we can rebel. So the federal government has statutes that say we will not register guns. States will, but we won't. You could argue that the Class 3 weapon system should be registered to the state police, not the ATF. You could. And you could argue that the federal law should read, yes, federal law, machine gun, silencer, sawed-off barrel, shotgun, short barrel rifle will be registered and tax stamped, but the tax stamp will come from the state police, not the ATF. You could argue that, you got a chance. Class 3 weapon, okay, Class 3. Registration. I made a whole video on registration. Registration has been contested and upheld in the common law. 25% of the country registers handguns. A few states register rifles, including New York City, Washington, D.C., state of California, and what's the one I'm thinking of? New Jersey. New Jersey registers Red Ryder BB guns these days. Dead serious. You gotta have a Ford in order to get one firearms owner's identification card. Now, I did a video on registration. I'll put it below. You, law-abiding citizens are required to register their guns. There was a Supreme Court case where the Supreme Court said if a criminal registers a gun, they are violating the Fifth Amendment. They're testifying against himself because you're a citizen. It's not illegal for you to have a gun. But a criminal, it is illegal for him to have a gun. So when a criminal fills out a registration card, he is testifying that he has committed a crime. So the people that are required to register their guns are the law-abiding citizens. The people that are not required to register their guns are the criminals. And it really doesn't do a lot. See, a lot of people like Rosie O'Donnell believe all criminals buy their guns in the gun store, and the guns are registered. And when a criminal commits a crime, they leave the gun at the scene in plain sight, and the cop sees it, writes down the serial number, goes to the house, and arrests them. Whatever. But even though I don't agree with registration entirely, even though I agree registration does not deter crime, even though I'll be the first one to tell you a state with registration laws and a state without registration laws will not see any significant difference in crime, registration is here to stay. I don't like it, but it's here to stay. Confiscation, that's the problem. I made a video about New York City confiscating guns. I'll put that below too. Confiscating guns is illegal unless you're a criminal. That you could change. That you could fight. Background investigations. Excuse me. Hello? Sweet potato. Bye. Sorry about that. Might call about my dinner. Okay. I've heard some people argue that a background investigation is unconstitutional. Well, the law says you're not allowed, you can't give guns to convicted felons, domestic abusers, and fugitives from justice, guys that are committing, guys that are suicidal, guys that can't distinguish reality from fantasy, liberals. So the background investigation is meant to verify that yes, you are a citizen, not a criminal. And it's because of the background investigation, criminals have to buy their guns in the street, not from the gun store. Now, some people say that you should not have any background investigation at all, period. Here's the problem with that. You know what a merchant of death is? There were times in history, World War I for instance, where you had factories that would make guns and give them to anybody that wanted them for any price. They didn't care about the politics involved, they cared about getting the money at the end of the day. A criminal can legally buy a gun in the gun store. You can legally buy a gun in the gun store. The criminal buys his gun in the gun store to kill you. You buy your gun in the gun store to stop him from killing you. You've both bought your gun in the same place, therefore the gun store is a merchant of death. Now, Paul Humphrey and other Brady campaign slugs said that they blamed the gun dealers for Fast and Furious. The anti-gun lobby wants us to believe that any gun dealer will give any gun to anyone, no questions asked, under the table, out the back door. They just want the money, which is totally not true. But had background investigations not existed, Mexican drug lords could come across the border and buy guns in the gun store legally. Because there's no background investigation, there's no photo ID. They could do it. And I know that before 1934, anyone could legally buy a machine gun, have it mailed to their house through mail order catalog, and there was less crime back then, but believe me, if background investigations are abolished, criminals will buy their gun in the gun store, and it will add fuel to the gun control fire, and it will not be good for us, believe me. You're not going to argue it down. Readmission of banned individuals. I made a video. I put that in the link too. A little star here for it. There are people that are banned from owning guns. Convicted felons, domestic abusers, people that are on the run from the law, people that are in custody. Well, you might be on probation for 6 months for shoplifting, and then at the end of 6 months get your guns back. But people that are, there are people that are dangerous to society and they cannot have guns. I've heard that once someone is out of prison and they've served their sentence and they're now free again, they should be allowed to own a gun again. If you were to write a law that would say someone convicted of a non-violent felony after 10 years after the conviction, if they have stayed out of trouble, and they're going to buy one gun and one gun only and register it with the ATF, I probably would be okay with that. But as far as violent criminals are concerned, do you want rapists and child molesters and armed robbers coming out of prison after serving 5, 10, 20 years and buying guns legally in the store? I don't want that. This all stems back to the 1968 federal law written by Lyndon Johnson that bans convicted felons, domestic abusers, and others on the federal level of owning a gun. Now, Lyndon Johnson went out of his way to victimize the poor in this country. Okay? He never missed an opportunity to say the N-word. He was a racist. He was a pig. I have no respect for him. He was the Joe Biden of the 1960s and 70s, and he is a shining example of why Joe Biden should not be president. But convicted felons can't have guns. Domestic abusers can't have guns. I've been in the courts. I did my internship with the court system. A lot of my regular viewers know that, and they should know that I've seen the cases. The most violent people in the world are domestic abusers. So people that are violent offenders should not be allowed to own guns. They should not be readmitted into the gun community. They should be banned because they are a threat to society. Okay, licensing. New York State, a lot of states require a handgun license. Okay, concealed license, this and that. Some places like New York City require a long gun license. Yeah. Illinois and New Jersey have FOID, Firearms Owner's Identification Card, where you have to have a special card in order to touch a gun or touch ammunition. Now, licensing comes from a collaboration of the Democratic Party and the Ku Klux Klan. I did a video on the Ku Klux Klan and racism. Let me look at that. I'm going to put a video down where I explain the KKK and racism and gun control and racism. I'm going to put that down there in the link. Gun control and racism. The Klan works for the Democratic Party. 6 Democrats founded the Klan. When the Republican Party gave blacks the right to vote, the Democratic Party hired the Klan to begin a terrorist campaign against the civil rights movement. And one of the things they did was they said, no person can own a gun without a license. And they put white supremacists in charge of the licensing division. And they told them, give whites guns, not blacks. Years later, when Hitler took over Germany, Hitler took that and copied it verbatim. He just replaced black with Jew. No Jews can own guns. Now, that racist crap obviously will not fly well today. But the licensing part, they use the license as an excuse to a super duper background investigation. They want to be extra careful, maybe give you a little bit extra paperwork, extra fees, little hurdles, but they want to be super duper certain that you are really a law-abiding citizen and you're not a criminal. Is it a pain in the ass? Of course it is. Is it going to be abolished? No, it's not. I'm not going to say I agree with the FOID. I think it's stupid that in New Jersey you got to show photo ID to buy a box of ammo. Okay, I have ammo at my house in New York, no big deal. But I think it is stupid, but you're not going to win with it, guys. You're just not. I've heard a lot of guys say abolish the license. Let everybody buy a gun, buy a handgun, buy a rifle, buy a machine gun, no licensing, just let them carry, no big deal. Licensing, it's not going to work. Also, carry concealed licenses. I've heard guys say you should be allowed to carry a gun in the street without a license. Well, if a cop sees the gun, how does he know you're not a criminal? If you got a license, you can show him the license, right? So you're not going to get anywhere with that. Safety classes. Some places require you to have a mandatory safety class before you buy a gun. Do I agree with that? Yeah, I do. I'm going to tell you why. There are a lot of people that are really, really stupid. And to be perfectly honest, 2 out of 3 accidents that I've seen involve a cop. We need to have safety training so that people understand the basics, also so we can weed some people out. And there are some people that, if I was running a range and they were really, really stupid, if I didn't have the power to ban them from owning a gun, I'd have the power to allow them to come to my range. I would say, listen, you're stupid, you want to buy a gun, buy it somewhere else, you're not bringing it to my range because you're stupid. You're not putting me in danger. You're not putting my customers in danger. So, safety classes are a way to make sure we know what we're doing. Guns are dangerous. Even though cars kill as many people as guns are still dangerous. We need a license for everything. Security license. I have a security license, an armed guard license, a driver's license. We have CDL licenses. We have heavy equipment licenses. We have this and that license, that license, that license, that license. Got a sore throat. You have to have a safety class. Also, it's money for the instructor. The instructor has a job. You give him money. And money in the economy, job for him. So, let that safety class be. I forgot what licensing though. Excessive fees. New York City charges $120 for a handgun, a long gun license. Renew every 3 years. $340 for a handgun license. Renew every 3 years. Excessive licensing fees are being contested. You can contest them. But a license in general, not going to contest it. Forgot to mention that. Back to safety classes. Emily Miller, I'm going to put a link, I'm going to put a video of hers down the bottom. Testified before a committee in Washington, D.C. And she said that you should have training, but it should not be mandatory. I forget what she said exactly, and if you're listening, please forgive me if I made a mistake. I'm sorry in advance. Go down and watch what she said and hear it from the horse's mouth yourself. She was testifying. Now, she did a publicity photo, which was just for fun and games, where she's holding 2 handguns, the mags are out, and she's got her finger on the trigger. The guy questioning her said, "You violated your training." She said, "No, it was a joke, the mag was out, blah, 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 not a big deal." I didn't think it was a big deal. But we should have safety training to eliminate idiots, to be careful, we know what we're doing, double check, triple check. Using a gun is not as easy as people think it is. You've got to have the safety rules memorized and stuff like that. So, safety classes are a good thing. They reduce the chance there might be an accident. You're never going to get a federal court to abolish safety classes. It's unconstitutional. Not going to happen. Okay. So these are the gun laws that are never going to be abolished. I don't agree with all of them. I'm just telling you they're not going to get abolished. Keep the hate mail to a minimum. Keep the death threats to a minimum. Thank you.